All right, we stopped close to the end of the chapter 8, kind of moving forward. Here we are. And there is a beautiful footnote which we must read. So we spoke about these two paths. Agnir Jyotir Ahak Shuklak Shanmasa Uttarayanam Tatra Prayata Gachanti Brahma Brahma Vido Jana Dhumo Ratrih Tatha Krishnah Shanmasa Dakshinayanam Tatra Chandramasam Jyotir Yogi Prapya Nivartate. This is the ancient vision of the light and darkness of the solar and lunar calendar or path, the path of Devayana and Pitriyana. We spoke extensively on these two simultaneous movements of our evolution of the soul and all the powers of the soul, and the evolution of the bodies and all the powers of the bodies, all the instruments of knowledge. So Sri Aurobindo makes here a footnote, which I want to read. Whatever psychophysical fact or else symbolism there may be behind this notion, it comes down from the age of the mystics who saw in every physical thing an effective symbol of the psychological. It's very close to the Vedic vision, yes? Behind every physical event, there is a psychological event, or transmission of some psychological quality of consciousness, and who traced everywhere an interaction and a sort of identity of the outward with the inward, light and knowledge, the fiery principle and the spiritual energy. We need observe only the turn by which the Gita closes the passage. Therefore, at all times, be in yoga. Yogic experience, that is the footnote to the footnote behind this notion. Yogic experience shows, in fact, that there is a real psychophysical truth, not indeed absolute in its application, behind this idea. That is, in the inner struggle between the powers of the light and the powers of the darkness. The former tend to have a natural prevalence in the bright periods of the day or the year, the latter in the dark periods. And this balance may last until the fundamental victory is won. So we have this breathing in and breathing out. It's a constant, ongoing, dynamic manifestation of the spirit. There was no other way for the spirit to manifest and to stay alive in the form of time and space, in the form of matter. Otherwise it would die out simply. It needs to live, and it needs to live constantly, again and again, as it were. It's amazing, yes? This breathing in and breathing out is nothing but kind of reviving constantly the dead matter. We have to bring the power of the spirit into the action constantly, non-stop. And when, you remember this, when Mother describes the vision of the supramental world, that this world is being created and destroyed every moment, every time. This was a revelation for me, because I understood how the spirit maintains itself in this world of unconsciousness. How else would you do it? You need a pulsation, you need breathing in and out, you need a constant revival of the matter. It's a constant sacrifice, constant action upon it. So this up and down, this light and darkness, this breathing in and breathing out, is the dynamic way of the spirit to manifest in material universe, in time and space. So that's what Sri Aurobindo is referring to. And then he continues.
Sorry, can I interrupt?
Yeah, please.
Thank you. Can we say between Purusha and Prakriti, the link is the prana? Pranayama is linking Purusha and Prakriti?
Well, one should, yeah, well, we are using everything as a symbol of the spirit, yes, here. So everything is, yes. And in the ancient also Brahmanic literature, they use prana as the offspring of the mind, heaven, and word, earth. Yeah, so that prana and apana, breathing in and breathing out, are two major manifestations of the spirit. The spirit is manifested in terms of life energy. If we think of a life energy, it's the most mysterious thing. We can think of matter, we can deal with matter, we can deal even with thoughts and logic and mind, as it were. But we can't, at least, I cannot understand the life force. What is this life about? How can you at all describe it other than spirit? And that's why life and spirit are so connected in the Western tradition. They speak about astral worlds, and the soul is in this vital world. And that's why even the soul, the psychic being, is located somewhere behind plexus solaris, behind the heart center deeply. But it is kind of organizing itself through the life force, as it were. So they are somehow the whole spiritual presence comes through the life force into this manifestation. It's a mystery of our living on earth or in the universe in general. What is this life force? Why it is there? Why and how is that even imaginable that we live in this physical body? It is living, breathing, growing, functioning, obeying our will. It's incredible.
Vladimir, you just mentioned plexus solaris and the heart center. And I'm wondering, what's your understanding of where Sri Aurobindo and the mother placed those with relation to the physical body? Because I hear some people put
to the psychic body. I mean,
the psychic being, yes. Oh. But is that behind the heart? Is it in the navel or halfway between them?
No, it's neither navel. Navel is already Manipura, but he discusses this with Pavitra. Some of you may have read this in the conversations with Pavitra. Actually, it's a very confusing topic because many people put the heart and the Hatha center above, kind of in the middle of the chest. Yeah, and we see these pictures everywhere and discussions, and even with community from Sri Aurobindo, I would invite, of course, Martha and Robert here also to give their input, and whoever knows about this. I was looking for this answer quite some time, because in the conversations with Pavitra, he says that there is actually, the heart center is a plexus solaris. Yeah? And behind it, deeply within, there is the psychic being. And Pavitra asks him, is there a center between the plexus solaris and throat center somewhere? Yeah? And he says, no, there is no such center in between. So it makes me think that what we refer to Anahata chakra is this plexus solaris center. Below there is navel, yeah? And below there is the what we call Svadhisthana or Dantian center, where all the nadis come, and the nervous system is connected to the physical body.
Yeah, but the solar plexus, is that right below the diaphragm, between the heart and the navel, about halfway between?
it's where ribs are coming together, that dot. You can touch
Yeah.
it
Okay.
and
So
you
the
would
bottom of the
feel,
sternum.
yeah, it's the most sensitive part. When I touch it, I feel the whole body vibrates. Even slowly touch, like do like this very gently, and you will feel like nausea immediately. It's such a sensitive center, plexus solaris. Shubhendu describes this center as the electrical station in the body.
Because I don't know exactly whether it was reference to the heart center. I think it was, but it was definitely in one of their writings that I saw, in the center of the chest, behind the physical heart, but also kind of aligned on the horizontal plane, aligned with the two nipples, which would put it, an inch or two above the sternum, the bottom of the sternum.
Well, it's very close. It's like 1 inch
Yeah.
from the plexus solaris in a way.
Yeah.
And I guess that everybody has different constitution of the chest, of the bone structure.
Yeah, and different perception of presence down there. Whether it's the presence is, I feel it is, has no clear-cut boundaries. It's not like a picture you can draw without a lot of shading. You can't just draw a circle around where you feel the presence and where you don't.
Right. Well, yeah, you have to kind of decide for yourself or study it and find the answer for yourself where your Anahata chakra is. If you want to be very precise, I think it's more in the subtle body. So if you close your eyes, rather in that way, you will find it easier than just opening your eyes and looking on your body.
Yeah, thank you.
So I want to finish this kind of explanation which Shubhendu gives on these two paths, because these two paths are fundamental for our understanding of integral yoga in general. The path of the Pitris or Pitriana or lunar calendar, yes, the whole bigger cosmos, which builds all our resources here. All our bodies are coming as some borrowed resources of cosmos. If I'm thinking about my physical body, I borrowed all the materials, all the matter from this bigger cosmos. Yeah? I took the food, the resources. My mother brought my body in. She took the food, resources, built this body. Then I continued to feed it and to make it functional through the resources, outer resources, food, and not only food, all the vital energy, all the feelings, emotions, sensations which I received. And it may be considered to be from outside because inwardly I received them from somewhere with exchange, through exchange with other beings. And the same mental, all my dogmas, thoughts, philosophies, literature, what we are reading, everything was given to me, or I took it from the outer resources, from the cosmos. So these cosmic resources, which invested into this being, which I call Vladimir, this being was born in a particular time and space. In that moment of time, that investment of those particular forces, spiritual forces standing behind the physical, kind of gave their permission for the whole kind of, how to say, not accepting, but accumulation of all other forces in a particular fashion or in a particular structure. So I am what I am because I was born in a particular time and space, particular lagna, as they say in Jyotish, in a particular time and a particular planet, a particular constellation, behind which there is a specific spiritual force which gives or invests the resources into this being. So, and then I build up myself over time. I lived some long time, and all this was accumulated in a particular fashion. These are outer resources, but there are also inner resources. My soul interacts with this outer being and needs help. needs a spiritual help. And there are many such forces coming from grahas in the solar home, as it were. Solar home is our solar system, with Jupiter, with Venus, with all the planets. And they are, behind them, there are certain powers, divine powers, which they represent physically, but behind there are spiritual powers, which I need to build my interaction with these outer beings or means or instruments of knowledge, my bodies. So I need to know how to interact with them, how to deal with them, how to involve them, and so on. So the soul is evolving and developing also relations with the outer body through the means which are also provided by the solar home, by the sun. Sun is our home for the soul, and the cosmos or moon is our home for the body. And these two come together and they build what we are. By one, we are reincarnating constantly, coming, taking bodies, or leaving, coming, taking bodies, leaving. This is our Devayana. We are constantly interacting with this world. And by others, we build it through the genetic code towards the future generations. And those future generations provide us materials for our reincarnation. So this is the vision of the Veda, of two yanas, two paths of Pitriyana, the fathers, forefathers, ancestors, who provide for us the means of incarnation, and Devayana, the reincarnation of the soul. This is what we were talking the other day. And now look at this. This is something interesting. Why he mentions this here, Krishna saying, Gita closes this passage, therefore at all times be in yoga. What is this be in yoga? And here he explains this. For that is, after all, the essential to make the whole being one with the divine, so entirely and in all ways one, as to be naturally and constantly fixed in union, and thus to make all living not only thought and meditation, but action, labor, battle, a remembering of God. Remember me and fight means not to lose the ever-present thought of the eternal for one single moment in the clash of the temporal, which normally absorbs our minds, and that seems sufficiently difficult, almost impossible. How can one fight and remember the divine? It's just quite difficult, almost impossible. It is entirely possible, indeed, only if the other conditions are satisfied. If we have become in our consciousness one self with all, one self which is always to our thought the divine, and even our eyes and our other senses see and sense the divine being everywhere, so that it is impossible for us at any time at all to feel or think of anything as that merely which the unenlightened sense perceives, but only as the Godhead at once concealed and manifested in that form. And if our will is one in consciousness with the Supreme Will, and every act of will, of mind, of body is felt to come from it, to the movement, instinct with it, or identical, then what the Gita demands can be integrally done. the remembrance of the divine being becomes no longer the intermittent act of the mind, but natural condition of our activities, and away the very substance of the consciousness. The jiva has become possessed of its right and natural, its spiritual relation to the Purushottama, and all our life is a yoga, an accomplished and yet an eternally self-accomplishing oneness. This is a profound statement. An accomplished and yet an eternally self-accomplishing oneness. Now, what I gathered from this quotation when I was preparing for this meeting with you, was a kind of revelation for me that the constant remembrance of the divine is necessary not for the sake of bringing it to the action in the outer world, but to connect the inner being, our inner being, with Purushottama's presence. And that will fulfill the rest. So it doesn't have to be perfect. We think about perfect connection, that we should see the divine in every activity. We cannot do it until first we make that inner connection of our inner being with the Purushottama's presence. And that constant remembrance of the divine, whatever happens outside, is the key. This is what I got from this passage. So we have two connections. We have connection of our soul with the outer being, which is very difficult to establish and nearly impossible, because it will be we will be propagating something or brainwashing ourselves that the divine is everywhere, lying to ourselves, as it were, and it won't work. We will be hypocrites of some kind, yeah? Saying one thing, doing another. But constantly remembering the divine in every activities, in spite of them being overwhelming, constantly remembering the divine without any interruption, generates that inner connection of the soul to the Purushottama, which in effect will then change these outer relations of our being with the world. This is what I was saying, wow, today. Now I understood. I was always belittling this kind of mechanical remembrance of the divine. Yeah? I was always thinking, oh, this is ritualistic. It's not true. It's people always try to remember the divine, and this is not real. It's mental, but it does its work. It does something within. Not without, within. There is a tuning within taking place, some kind of magic tuning. So ritual can be justified in a way. Ritualistic approach also can be justified as a means of that connection. Okay, I will proceed then. Naitis riti parthajanan yogi muhyati kaschana tasmat sarveshu kaleshu yoga yuktav bhava Arjuna. The yogin who knows them is not misled into any error. Notice it's quite interesting. The yogi who janan, who knows sriti naite sriti, the one who does not know these two paths, these two flows. Sriti is a flow or path or movement or current. The yogi who does not know these two currents is muhyati. Every yogi is bewildered, yeah? So the one who knows them is not misled, I will translate it other way around, is not misled into any error. Therefore, at all times, be in yoga, O Arjuna. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu. In all times, yoga yukto bhava Arjuna. Be connected to yoga, to this remembrance who you are and whom you represent here. Vedeshu, yajneshu, tapassu chaiva daneshu, yat punyaphalam pradishtam, atieti tat sarvam idam, viditva yogi param sthanam upaiti chadyam. So in the Vedas, in the yajnas, sacrifices, tapasu, in all the efforts, chaiva daneshu, in all the gifts made for others. Yat punya phalam pradishtam, whatever the punya phalam, whatever the fruit of that merit is, atiyeti tat sarvam idam viditva. Knowing this, one overcomes all that. Yogin param sthanam upaiti chadyam. Yogin moves to the supreme state of consciousness. So what is amazing here in these two shlokas at the end, which I discovered later in my life, is that the one who knows both the past, both the currents, both the streams, that yogi is not muhyati. He is not bewildered. Not the one who knows one path. Yeah? We have to see the Devayana and Pitriyana together. We have to understand the process of evolution, and only then we will not be bewildered. And only then we can stay connected to yoga. Otherwise, we become Advaitins, we neglect nature and go to the spirit, or opposite, we forget the spirit and go to the nature. We must keep both intact. We have to understand both, and only thus and not otherwise we will be able to overcome it and remember the divine in all the actions. So this is this beautiful conclusion of the chapter 8. Okay, I will stop here, and if you have some observations, please share with us.
Yes, please. I want to ask about the relation of psychology and psychophysical. It was mentioned in the Sri Aurobindo comment.
Yeah.
And this psychological concept from Sri Aurobindo is based in the biological organism, or is more as an abstract conception of the being. I mean, is this psychological is based on the brain or based on the mind? Thank you.
Yeah. Right. You see, it's kind of interesting. We learn always from how we are made, how we think about things, how our terms are determining our thinking. It's a constant learning. I'm so much learning from this interaction with the text and with you, and the whole idea of psychophysical tradition, which Aurobindo mentions, Vedic, and here he mentions it again, is actually psychological for him, is psychic, spiritual. And physical is that which is embodying it. So there is some psychological. Later, of course, psychological becomes closer and closer to biological psychology, or whatever, the behavioral psychology. So there are many types of psychology. There are many layers which are kind of coming closer and closer to the physical. But what Sri Aurobindo wants to say, that the deepest, the most spiritual, and the most material are actually, material is reflected or is enterprise of the spirit. Spiritual is manifesting itself in the material form. That's what he wants to say. So it is everywhere psychological. Till it is physical, it is psychological. Even in the physical, it is deeply, fundamentally psychological, which we don't see yet. We think about physical as something else because we adopted this language of the separation on Purusha and Prakriti, spirit and matter. Matter is something else, spirit is something else. And we have this double creation. We came into this unconscious world to redeem it, to bring it back to its own self-awareness. All this we adopted as the way of thinking, as our mind functions in that way. But Mother tried so many times and to say that actually there is no spirit and matter. There is no Purusha and Prakriti. She hated this division. And truly speaking, it's very, very difficult to comprehend that there is one world and all this material manifestation is the spiritual manifestation. And that's why we speak about psycho-spiritual tradition. I know I'm not answering the question. I'm kind of avoiding answering precisely whether it is brain or mind, yeah? Because this division on brain and mind and body is all done by us with our mind who is making divisions. That's why I'm trying to bring that psychophysical tradition as one. And that's how he starts this beautifully here. Whatever psychophysical fact or else symbolism there may be behind this notion, it comes down to the age of mystics, of the mystics who saw in every physical thing an effective symbol of the psychological. I know it's just beyond the comprehension because mind needs duality. It cannot function without saying that this equals this, and by that it will understand the statement. But if we try, we will see that this is only a device. Mind is a device and not the knowledge. It's the instrument which may help us to discover some real knowledge. It may be an obstacle also.
When is mentioned Jiva, I think it's Jivatman. Jiva is in it can connect with Purushottama, isn't it? It's only Jiva who can connects with Purushottama, not before. No, not psychic, not the inner being, only in Jiva state, isn't it?
Well, psychic being is the jiva in this manifestation, yeah, projection of jiva to be here, to learn to stay here, to grow here in consciousness.
It's in another level, no? Maybe it's the same thread, but it's in another level. It's another station.
Right. I think something even more from all what I learned about this. I will tell you, and I may be wrong because I don't have the experience, but I have some intuition about this. This experience is impossible to have unless you have it. You can't really speak about it. But I believe that psychic being is a mysterious being who represents Purushottama. I believe that psychic being is even greater than what we think about it. We think about it in terms of metaphysics as if it is only a projection of Jivatman. And it is a projection of Jivatman. It is representative of unborn self, unborn individual universal self, which is very difficult to distinguish between individual and universal on that level. but there is someone behind even Jivatma, who made this possible for himself to reach out to his own creation through the psychic being. It's just intuition, nothing else. That's why Jesus says, only through me you can come to my Father. Through the psychic being.
Then that's mean like now if I use a metaphor now, if the psychic being is the ray of the sun could be Purushottama, and then if we are this kind of manifesting of rays, individual pose, then there is individual forever. There is not anymore oneness.
Yeah. And oneness is achieved through individual. Yes, right. This is another misconception of our mind, that oneness and individual are two opposite kind of contradictory concepts. It's not so. It's also another difficulty of the mind. The individual can and should have oneness, and oneness can be achieved or experienced by individual, only by individual, not by the universal one. Universal one doesn't have oneness. It has total identity with itself. Identity and oneness are, again, a bit different concepts. Oneness is achieved through unity. And that unity presumes some kind of individual elements which will be united, and in that unity they can achieve some oneness. To speak about oneness when there is only one it's like speaking about immortality before anything was created. Yes, doesn't make sense.
Yeah, then the experience of to be individual is the opportunity to experience unity, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. He wants to experience himself in unity.
And from the experience of unity, like we are now, we are in unity experience, we can experience oneness from our unity. That's could be.
Yeah, absolutely. Very nice. Very good. In my view, in my kind of, I do not know what others are.
Thank you to give me the possibility to experience oneness. Thank you.
You are most welcome.
To all of you.
Thank you for experiencing such oneness. And here there is this element of when we remember that, remember the divine in every moment of activity. Activity separates us. It is a separative consciousness. Yeah? But I remember that I am what I am. Yeah? I remember the divine who is here. I remember that everything, all the activities are the divine activities. I cannot realize this outside. It is not realizable in that way. It will not lead me to the unity, total unity outside. But it will reestablish the link within. And this is what he says. Yeah? It will be reestablishing that inner subtle link of my soul with the Purushottama who unites everything. And that will be more and more over time, tangible. More I acquire this experience or memory through living. That's why go fight and constantly stay in yoga. Whatever happens, stay in yoga. Don't think about anything else. Stay in that connection and see what happens.
Vladimir, I often think of the the yoga as an aspiration which creates an opening for that extra dimension to come in and act within us. It's not that we even do the work always. If we can just have the aspiration and the call, the remembering and offering that what the answer does, the answer goes way beyond what we can do ourselves. I mean, the answering force, should I say, goes way beyond what we can do ourselves. And that is, in fact, I think Mother says that. She said, it is I who do the yoga in you and through you. And your job is to remain open and transparent.
This is the connection that what Sri Aurobindo is putting here, that connection which is established between yourself and the real doer of your yoga, who is there behind, yes. And once that is established, nothing is impossible outside. Then Sri Aurobindo brings this forward always in all his writings. I was already mentioning the Perseus the Deliverer, yes, when Andromeda was taken by that and was promised only hate and from all the beings here and beyond and for all times she will be hated. And she said, this is so unbearable to be hated. I don't want to be hated for all eternity. But then she asked, will you be with me, the Divine Mother? And she says, yes, I will always be with you. Then she says, I am ready. I'm ready to be given to the monster. This is the connection, that the soul made the connection with the higher force. Outwardly, it could be a total disaster, absolute collapse of everything. But inwardly, the trust in the divine, it will re-establish outwardly a new harmony, a new world. It will create the worlds outside. But that to establish that inner link is everything actually for us. We can't expect something more than that. At least we cannot transform this world. That much we can understand, yes. So it's not in our power to do that. Right. And of course there are powers of mistrust, of division, of constantly there's something always going on and people are not trusting each other. I can feel this fear and distrust. I can feel how it is rising from below, especially nowadays. I can feel it even objectively without even kind of communicating with anyone, sitting at home. I feel, where is this coming from? This kind of some kind of fear of being not oneself or something. Very strong current arising, which wants to be transformed through our consciousness. So what shall we do with it? We should only call for help. That's the only thing we should do. Remember and offer. Can't do anything else.
I have another view about that. Right. I think in this level unmanifested, everything is going perfect. Mm-hmm. But it's in the manifestation to bring the opportunity of the varieties and differences and is including the states of mind. It's not only different states of matter. It's in the nature. It needs different emotions and different thinkings, like different flowers. It's the variety, opportunity of the flourish manifesting. But if we identify ourselves of our thinking, it's only an illusion. But if we make a step backward or inward or wherever, everything is perfect. Even in all the sentient beings, maybe they manifest different attitudes, or maybe they are in the war, or maybe they are freeze or whatever. But it's only manifestations in this kind of level. But in the other level, in the unmanifest, everything is light. Everything is perfect. Why not? This
Yeah,
makes me peaceful, even in the war period like we are living together.
yeah,
Makes
absolutely.
me peaceful.
I agree with you. Yes, it's the only peace we can have. It is there. And still there is something about this world and this physical world. You see, how to say, we created this civilization which separates matter and spirit. Yeah? And because of that, in India, for example, many people believe in spiritual matters, so to say. And they would follow rather the spirit and the word, the beauty of the word, the beauty of the ideal. Yeah? And that may lead us so far away from the physical realization, that the physical will be neglected and will fall into some kind of, impractical state of being not involved, or rejecting even the spirit, rejecting everything, saying, go, leave me, be free from me, nature. We see this, Sri Aurobindo describes this in India, what happened. Yes, this belief, this constant focus on the ideal, believe in the word, consciousness, word, ideal, highest ideal, truth, yeah? But not connected through the vital, through the mental, totally to the physical, partially, yes, but not more. The grip over matter was lost, as he says. And that grip, that energy, that egoistic energy of the vital, was neglected over time, because the spiritual ideal is a higher, more sattvic. Yeah? And that sattvic led away from the rajasic, energetic involvement in nature, which became a very loose end and turned to be a problem at the end. It's quite amazing if you think of the complexity in which we live. So how to come back to that more integral vision of the world? How to embrace nature and spirit? How to be both? This is the most profound topic of the Gita, of integral yoga, and of the Veda, and Upanishads, of course. I was reading. Yes, Marta.
I was just going to say that one approach to integrating spirit and matter is to work, to do some manual work, such as gardening, and recognize, which is a rather direct way because of the connection with the natural world and the creation of the divine, and especially with springtime and the beauty that comes with it. Maybe not gardening, but certainly walking in nature and experiencing the divine in the natural world can be pretty helpful to integrating that reality within the thought mind, perhaps, and maybe it can go deeper. I hope so.
Thank you for sharing these. Yeah, these are important ideas, especially for people who are trying to do that to make that connection, and how to be one. And nature, of course, is the best way of identifying with, because it's innocent, it's perfected to the extent impossible to imagine. Through all the billions of years, it found the balance, the system which sustains itself, self-sustaining ecology, which is unbelievable when you think of everything supports everything, everything feeds everything, everything lives from everything. It's amazing how it is being arranged, what kind of spirit is involved there to make it work. And if we observe it, we will find many supporting ideas for the spirit, that it is not actually alone somewhere beyond. It is here with us always. But it's difficult to do it, as Satyavan says when he met Savitri. You remember what he said, that when I concentrated on God, nature disappeared. When I concentrated on nature, God disappeared. And I didn't know how to bring them together, either or. You know? If I go outside, inside disappears. If I go inside, I close my eyes, outside disappears. So, and then he says, but now you are here, and with your feet, that is your golden, you are the golden link between the spirit and matter. So now these two things can come together. I don't need to separate myself in this manifestation from the spirit, and don't need to go somewhere to find it. It may be here right now in this moment of time. It's a new paradigm. Well, ever new paradigm, yes, as Sherwin.
I want to make a joke now. I'm joking a little bit, and it's not to how do you say, between God and nature, isn't it? If Satyavani is ahead to God, nature disappear. If is in front of or concentrating nature, God disappear. The key is disappear. It's not the God, it's not the nature. The key is disappear. It's between. We have to disappear.
Right.
That's the balance.
Disappear, annul thyself, that only God may be. Step back from form and name. She hears, Savitri hears from the Lord saying to her. Right, one has to disappear in order to appear, reappear in the fullness of spirit and matter. In some way, yes. One has to agree to stop being or becoming or both, and non-being.
Isn't that surrender?
Yeah, absolutely. You don't claim anymore your knowledge, your world, your action upon the world. This is not your world in the egoistic sense. It's not our world in the egoistic sense. But again, I may surrender to some spirit beyond nature, neglecting nature and disappearing some. So how, this is a fundamental, most difficult question. And it looks like very primitive what we are discussing, but it is not, truly speaking. How to bring spirit and matter together. The moment we look outside, we forget about the spirit. We have to do things, and things have their own life, their own energy. Everything has its own. The moment I go into meditation, I again find something, some connection But then the world disappears. There are states of which are more luminous at a time, so I can feel the presence of the spirit. And there are states where I'm totally lost and don't know who I am, and so on. My consciousness is identified with some events, with some suffering, some wrong ideas, partial ideas, which I try to overcome with my own force, put them in the right perspective, and the more I try, the more mistakes I make. I try to correct wrongs, to make things right, and the more I do it, the worse it becomes.
Yes, but this is funny. This is the funny evolution. The question is not to be identified with this process, because it's only a evolution in consciousness or evolution in matter. But from the spiritual dimension, it's already perfect. It's a game. Play the game and enjoy it.
Well, that's what they say, Leela. Yeah, it's a constant Leela. He closed his eyes and then he opened his eyes. Oh, I'm still here. Then he again closed his eyes. Oh, I'm not here. Then he opened his eyes. Oh, I'm here. Right. He can play with himself, hide and seek. Am I there or not? And doesn't help, because we need to bring spirit and matter together. We need that this material manifestation will be the spiritual presence in every way, full of truth and full of manifestation of the luminous and immortal spirit, which is already partially, yes, only in our consciousness it's not there, because it operates by the mind, separating mind. Yes, Charles is thinking something deeply. Yes, Charles. Yeah.
Well, what we're speaking about is, for me, the explanation of the field, and that God begets consciousness, consciousness begets the mind begets the field begets the myriad of things. And so the cosmos is, as it's referred to as Prakriti, and that kind of the feminine context, it takes billions of years to create a hydrogen molecule and iron and all of the elements from the cosmos. And for me, that's the mother. And then in that is the being. And the being has assembled all of those elements from the mother, right? And that is the evolution back out. And so the field, and just from my understanding of unified physics, the field is what unifies spirit and matter, is that the field is filled with intelligence and information and highly interactive. And that's how I perceive it. And the other that I find really interesting is that there was a very elevating thought that you shared from Sri Aurobindo some weeks ago, and it was in passing, and it was where Sri Aurobindo had said that the body, the soul doesn't dwell within the body. It's that the body is within the soul. And so I think back on that, and that was really a profound thought for me. And then I think back on, all of the literature around that the soul is behind the heart, where I suspect really what it is that what is behind the heart is where the soul connects with the body. It's like in Chinese medicine, it's easy to think of the acupuncture points as physical points, but what the pure Taoist teachings are that it's where the non-local body attaches to the localized field. So the non-local connects to the local through the points. And I believe that in my current state of thinking that that's what happens behind the heart, because it's that conversation, am I a soul or is the soul me? And if I have a soul, then who am I that has a soul, right? And so that's my thoughts. And reason I really like what we're doing here is that I don't want the Gita to fit into my current understanding. I want my understanding to expand to encompass the teachings of the Gita. And that's what's happening for me.
Yeah, so who is having your soul actually? Is an amazing question actually. I have my soul. Who is this I who has it? And there are two eyes who have it actually. One is the outer eye of this body. That's what physics is about, the nature which created all the resources which we identified with ourselves. And within it there is a soul, as Vivekananda was saying, when we say we die, we leave the body. And when the Christians say they breathe out the spirit. So it depends with what you are identified. If you are identified with the body, you stay with the body, spirit goes. Or you leave the body and you go. So these two are there constantly, of course. And there is someone else who has it. That is the Purushottama behind. And he, through nature, through the soul, he made a connection with nature. That's what you described, actually, so beautifully, Charles.
And the other thing that I keep hearing from that, I speak with you about from time to time, is that the duality, the reason for duality is not one of separation for me. The nature of duality is that where opposites come together, it creates a gradient. And a gradient is only needed for there to be what's different, for there to be movement and motion. Like where the surface of the ocean meets the air, the temperature differential creates wind. And that allows there to be the universe is self-sustaining and its energy, and that's what drives it, is the dual nature, which it really isn't dual, but that just is what creates movement.
Yeah.
And the idea that consciousness only needs to know a feedback loop, and so it takes another to have a feedback. So I'm feeding out and I'm feeding back. I'm feeding into the field and I'm feeding back from the field. So that's my current thinking.
Very nice. I had today the idea of describing the musical harmony when I was listening to the music, and I thought, look at this, how beautiful this. He is constantly deviating from the major tone and going farther away, staying, coming back. And this deviation from the major tone creates harmonies, yes, creates tensions of some kind. And these tensions, these are exactly those movements. Yeah? So any deviation, that's what I wrote, I put it somewhere. Any deviation from the major tone creates a tension which is perceived as a power of the being, with different intensity and its proximity to the center, and returns to the core of the being as a delight. There is a constant delight in return to the core, to the truth. Deviation also is a delight, and return is a delight. Delight is in a deviation and return. These tensions are like colors, create the whole tapestry of experience, which we recognize as musical harmony. Otherwise, how would we recognize musical harmony? Why harmony is so touching us? So we're discussing the same one reality, which is spiritual enterprise. The world is the spiritual movement of being in many different ways. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. It was wonderful. So we finished chapter 8 for today, and we will start chapter 9, which is the big chapter, profound chapter, one of the central chapters of the Gita. Next time. Let us close then with, unless somebody wants to say something, please, if something is bursting through you or you kind of, no? Please, we have still some minutes.
I only want to say how lucky we are to enjoy these sessions every week. Thank you, Vladimir. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. It's so wonderful to build this spiritual community together and look for these in search of greater knowledge. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Namaste.